The following broadcast is intended for mature audiences. These are real people sharing very real, deeply personal experiences. This content may be considered triggering for others and for those who are sharing. The chat room is a privilege intended for discussions and sharing. You are not being asked to agree, but you are being asked to stay civil and refrain from personal attacks. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome back to Am I Mental, a live podcast where people share stories about how life impacts mental health and how mental health impacts life. I'm your host, E, and with us tonight is co-host Os.
What's up, Am I Mental fam?
And before we get started, as we do a lot of times, we have a little bit of housekeeping we want to do. First off, let's get you in our Discord. Go to amimental.net. Up at the top, you'll see a Discord icon. Unless you're on mobile, you'll see a little 3 lines for a menu. Click on that, and you'll see a Discord icon. Join us there. That way we can keep conversing beyond episodes and beyond the chat room. Also, if you want to help us out, share some episodes. Best way to do it. If you know someone that's having some issues, find an episode that's related. Share it with them. It's actually been pretty amazing, the kind of feedback we get about that. Otherwise, if you want to do more than just share episodes, you really want to help us out, amimental.net/donate. There's a number of ways you could donate to us. There's a subscription-based, there's just one-offs, and we also have some merchandise. And if there's anything that you'd like us to make, let us know. It does not take us long to be able to throw up a product, and so that way you can get what you want. Outside of that, let's go ahead and introduce our guest, Evie.
Hi.
Hi, so why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what we're going to talk about tonight?
So my name is Evie, and I don't know if Oscar's cool with this.
Yep, she's my crazy ex-wife.
Yes, I am.
She told me that I had to say that.
Yeah.
So, yes, I did.
Yeah. So being the crazy ex-wife, there's a reason I was kind of out of pocket. I think we both had like a bit of a past. But what I'd like to talk about today, and I've been so kindly given the opportunity to share, is how growing up in a abusive household can really impact your life well into your adulthood if not managed, and if you don't get the right kind of help and support. But yeah. So
what was that early childhood like for you? What did your household look like?
Well, Mom and Dad were like just super interesting people. If you just look at them as people, you try to like recognize that they were two people in love who had their own issues, but my dad was an alcoholic. My mom was the victim of her own kind of child abuse, and so was my dad. And it was a very codependent family structure. My dad still had a very toxic relationship with one of his abusers, his mother, who was had a really gross incestuous, like not actually incestuous, but like emotionally incestuous tie to my father that controlled him and resulted in a lot worse like issues. And my grandmother was abusive to all of us, and my dad kind of was just like, this is how it is, until my mom almost left. She tried to kill my mom. My mom woke up with her like staring at her at one point while she was sleeping. Tried to crack her in the back of the head. She definitely hurt my younger brother and I up until we were like 2 or 3. My dad like also perpetuated that sort of shit, you know.
I think the story that best can depict the people what your grandmother was like is the story where your dad caught her leaving the house.
Oh, so my grandmother was just this peppery little 5'2" woman who was in her own head, had her own mental health issues, stemming back to being born in like like the 1800s or early 1900s. I don't remember how old she was, but she was old. And in like the 80s or 90s, it had to be the 80s, just before he met my mom. After my grandfather died, she got into it with one of the neighbor ladies, and they always were just like clucking at each other anyway. And she was going to go and kill Dorothy, one of the neighbor ladies, because Dorothy supposedly poisoned one of her friend neighbor lady's cats or dogs or something. So she just left the house with a claw hammer and was like, I'm going on a walk. And my dad was drunk in the middle of the day, as was per tradition. And it dawned on him that she left the house with a big ass claw hammer. And he goes running down the block after her and actually has to go into a full sprint because he cannot catch her. She just takes off running and is like, I want to kill that bitch. And then just goes, right? And he fortunately was very fit and caught up with her, picked her up, and she's just swinging and kicking and wildcatting her ass and just like, you put me the fuck down. And yeah, so that's the kind of grandma I had. She like talked about poisoning people, how to poison people in detail, all sorts of stuff. She was not cool.
Wow.
But my dad was like a drunk, very physically abusive. I hate to put it this way, and people who have experienced this, I want you to know that like I'm aware that is a whole other experience and deeply traumatizing, very real thing. I was never molested. I thank God for that every day. At least it wasn't that, right? But my earliest memory is having the shit kicked.
At the same time, I do want to say your struggle is your struggle. It is valid.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it is.
Yeah, just because you didn't get molested doesn't mean that you weren't abused. You were still abused,
No, yeah.
and yeah.
Yeah, it's a whole other ball of wax that, but yeah, my earliest memory is having the shit kicked out of me. And I remember telling my mom, I remember telling teachers, and nothing got done about it. Like literally ever. I went to teachers a couple of times and they just went to my dad, which made things worse at home. I went to my mom every time it happened, and she just was like, okay, well, I'll talk to him. And then it would just get worse, like as if we were coworkers and we were just settling a dispute. My mom would just go and like try and hash it out and make us make up, because
or she would just straight tell you were lying, because he would do it. The abuse would take place when she was out of the house. So
yeah,
mom
there were
would
definitely
work,
periods of
dad
time
worked
where,
at night.
yeah, like my dad worked nights. He was a security guard or an armed guard at any given point because he was an alcoholic and he couldn't hold down a regular 9 to 5, or he was in his own head and he was so psychotic he would make up disputes, fake issues within the work atmosphere and create interpersonal issues and get himself fired because he would self-sabotage. So, that created a whole other bag of problems with food scarcity, money scarcity, resulting in what are we going to do? Are the lights staying on? Shit like that. My mom was the breadwinner. So I get that she had her own struggles, but every time, and I mean every time we would tell her something was going on, she would literally do the same thing her mother did to her and either ignore it, believe him, because he would say like, oh, well, they're just trying to pit us against each other. They're manipulating you, as if a 4, 5, 6-year-old is creating interpersonal political tactics within a family dynamic, right?
Right.
And
I mean, it's like, not to say that they can't be manipulative, but not like that.
no. And when I would tell her, like, it doesn't get better, he still hits us. Like, this isn't normal. And I would say things like, this isn't normal. We shouldn't be dealing with this. This isn't normal. I remember saying that so much. And then I think by the time I was like 13 or 14, my mom just grounded me from talking about my dad. Like, I wasn't allowed to say anything about dad for years unless it was like something functional to the household or a need. I wasn't allowed to talk about things that dad was doing. I was grounded from speaking about my dad, period. Like, because I was causing drama. There was a point where she told me I needed to be on mood stabilizers because I was so upset all the time. And she blamed that entirely on me and my being a problem, an emotional problem or psychotic. She tried to force me onto Lexapro at like 16 or 17.
I'm sitting here going, yeah, you have every right to be upset and be emotional. Bad shit's happening to you.
Right. And so she just had such an amazing suspense of disbelief and cognitive dissonance for me and my brother being abused and the emotional reactions and poor behaviors that resulted from it, and was able to completely compartmentalize the two. The best example I have of that is my dad dipped. So, do you guys watch South Park?
Used to.
Okay, you know how there's that whole thing that they do in their storylines where Stan's dad just suddenly decides he's a new identity and does something really freaking weird for a while?
Like cream fraiche.
Cream fraiche. Like Steely Dan, right? Okay. So that was my dad. He would just reinvent himself every year and have a new hobby, a new career, a new identity. And it would be a money pit and it would be a problem. And I was 8. No one could stop him. My mom wouldn't stop him. And she wouldn't leave. Like he was verbally abusive to her. He would never hold down a job. We were always broke and struggling, and then he would just go, suddenly, I'm an armed guard, but now I've decided I'm doing sales with no background. Or now I've decided I'm going to run a large porn website ring. Now I'm going to run 15 eBay stores reselling niche Nazi paraphernalia. And then one year, from when I was 12,
there's a market for that, but damn.
right? It was.
It's so eclectic. Like it's like there's no common thread.
No, and it was super weird. He went and then one year he decided, I'm going to be a long haul trucker, and you're going to help me pay my mother for the Class A license, and I'm going to go and become a long haul trucker forever.
I'm just going to say, God forbid that he ever got that with the way that his mind works.
He did. So he became a long haul trucker for about a year, and it was the best year of my life.
Because he was gone.
Right, he was gone. We only had to talk to him on the phone, and it was out of obligation because Mom would make us. And it was phenomenal. It was peaceful. I honestly don't remember a lot about the time because I don't remember large swaths of my childhood. Just because my brain unfortunately deletes stuff. But I remember that was the happiest part of my childhood. We would have movie nights and popcorn nights, and Mom would take us swimming, and we would sit with her and watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It was just nice to be able to come home and not be afraid of what I was coming home to. And right before my 12th birthday, he just unannounced came home, right? Quit his job as he usually does, made up some reason, and came home literally on my birthday or right the day before. And instead of it being something like that I was excited about, Mom brings him out and he's clearly drunk and he's clearly unhinged. And he's like, I'm home. Didn't you miss me? And I start sobbing. I just remember crying and being like, what, are you fucking kidding me? Like, I didn't say that, but I'm just like, oh my God. And he's offended. He's offended that I'm upset that he's home. And he just is super fucked up and really like, well, fucking, of course you don't fucking want me around because your mom doesn't fucking want me around or something like that. I don't remember. It was really weird and I didn't know why at the time. And then Mom grabs me and yells at me and is like, how dare you? Your father came home and yada, yada, yada. And you should be grateful to see him. And, completely, again, cognitive dissonance. Like if your child is crying because this person is present again in their lives, and she knows, I've been telling her for years, Dad beats us, Dad beats us, Dad beats us. Does not give a shit, has no empathy for it, is upset with me for making him upset. Little did I know, right before he did that, right before they told us he was here, he showed up, accused her of cheating on him this whole time. Now, my mom can't be bought or sold by anybody. She holds a very powerful position in what she does, and one of the things that makes her powerful is that no one can bribe her, no one tells her what to do. If I can create my own cognitive dissonance, while she was a terrible parent and she was incredibly negligent and cruel. As a professional and as someone who appreciates fashion, she is an icon and I have the utmost respect for her. But like I said, she cannot be bought or sold. Her ethics are her ethics and she will die on them. She would never. She was home with us every night. We had a routine. She was very routine. We got up, we went to school, we came home, we did taekwondo, we did homework. or we had swim, and then we did homework, and then we would have dinner, and then it was Buffy, and then it was Star Trek Voyager, and then it was kick rocks, go to bed. Okay? So,
So she had it in her to be an absolute kick-ass mother as well.
yeah, absolutely. Our house was held together by that rigidity and that intense understanding of how to run a household. She was an operations magistrate, perfect in that way.
Because, I mean, one thing that kids want, even though they rebel against it constantly, is structure.
And like,
Yeah.
I loved it. I loved how we did stuff. I was like, oh, it's swim time. Oh, it's movie day. Oh, it's this. Oh,
You knew the routine. You knew what to look forward to.
right. And like, there were times because I was becoming a teenager where I was like definitely reclusive. But like, I feel, unfortunately, that evolved from not wanting to be around them, from not being heard. But when we were spending time together, when we were doing that, she and I had like our own thing. We'd watch Cowboy Bebop together. We had our thing as I got older. But he came back, accused her of cheating on him, screamed at her in her face, got in her face, and physically threatened her. And she was in the bathroom. She didn't know he was coming home. And then forced her to cower into the bathtub and was just over her like this. And she didn't tell me this until like a couple of years ago, until she was just sobbing and like panicking in the bathtub because A, she didn't know he was coming home, and B, what the fuck? Why? And never. She talked to him on the phone every night. But it's all in his head. He just makes shit up, because of his own psychosis. So that's like the biggest cognitive dissonance. She literally just experienced this and then can't figure out why I don't want this man in our lives, and I'm so upset that he's home. And then blames me.
From an outsider perspective, I would guess, and I could be way off base here, so go ahead and correct me if I'm wrong. I think what it is that she had such organization in her life that she couldn't have a dysfunctional family in her own head.
I don't fucking know.
That'd be that's what I see coming from the outside.
At 16, I was like, you are doing to me what your mom did to you, right? You are literally telling me that these things aren't happening and that my opinion on this doesn't matter and that I'm overblowing it and that my dad's actually a good man. This is the exact thing that Maxine did to you. How are you doing this? And she was so furious that I would make such a parallel. And it's literally what it was.
Let me guess. It's almost exactly like, I'm not gaslighting you. You're just crazy.
Like
literal gaslighting in the worst fate.
So
There's a long history of that. A lot of it was, if there was, Evie shared with me that if any of what she was saying, any of the reports of abuse to her mom were acknowledged, they were extremely played down.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like a little kid who treating her like she's a little kid who got a swat on the butt for being bad is saying, I got my shit wrecked by dad. But that's not the case.
No, and I'm going to get into something pretty graphic. So I'm going to tell everyone who's listening, all of this has been shit so far. Okay. This is really horrible to hear. And I'm able to speak at it from a matter of fact sense because I've lived it and I've had the memories of it etched into my brain entirely for my whole life. And I've had to say it over and over and over to so many different types of trauma counselors that what I'm about to speak about, I can speak about in the same way. So if you can't stomach heavy duty dark shit, I really, really ask you to pause for a minute or brace yourself. This is your content warning. So what I'm about to share with you is pretty hideous. So I'm going to give like another 10 seconds. I just want to let you guys know this does affect me. I'm not making light of this by having such a matter-of-fact tone about it, but I've lived it and I've talked about it at length. I am 35. This happened when I was 7 or 6. So my dad would sleep all day. He worked nights and he wouldn't wake up to feed us. He wouldn't feed us before he left for work. He would often leave and my mom would come home and be like, did dad feed you? And we'd say no. And she would be furious. So William is 2 or 3 if I am 6, depending on the time of year, and my brother. And he's hungry. He's a little kid. And so I go and try to make us cereal, because the last time I tried to pull bologna out of a pack, we got beat. Last time I tried to pull cheese out of something, we got beat. And my entire life at that point was trying to protect this toddler, this baby, from being manhandled by a 6'2" powerlifter who was drunk. Like when my dad laid hand on us, I mean, we were babies and it was awful. So my entire goal was to never, ever let it happen to William. If I could take the blame for it every time, I would. So I'm like, I'm 6 or 7. I'm trying to hold a gallon of milk and pour cereal, and I can't. And I pour the whole thing all over the floor. My dad wakes up because he hears the bowl crack, like it wobbles on the floor. And he comes out, and William goes running and hiding in the hallway. There's 2 entrances to the kitchen. He's in the far entrance, and my dad comes through the one directly from their area. And he sees me, and it's, of course, what the fuck are you doing? And I'm just like, we're hungry. It's 3 p.m, and we haven't eaten since Mom fed us at breakfast around 7. And kids have to eat frequently, right?
Yeah,
we
that's
didn't.
a long time.
Yeah, we didn't. And so he picks me up by the shirt and just starts shaking me like Homer Simpson style. And then he slaps my face into the cereal bowl and the milk and just starts scrubbing the floor with my whole body and my face. My brother starts crying, and I start trying to get away, and I'm like, I don't even remember what I was saying. I'm just trying to make it stop. And my dad just starts choking me. And I had to validate this memory for my brother, who blocked it all out and didn't remember any of it until about a year ago, maybe 2. In the middle of like a mental breakdown, he remembered everything all at once. And he's like, I have this memory that I don't know if it's real. I have a memory of Dad killing you, and it's plagued me my whole life. And I sometimes see it in nightmares. And he describes this whole scene to me from behind the refrigerator, from his perspective. He's like, I just remember you dying. I was like, oh no, this happened a couple of times. He just choked me until I passed out and then mopped the floor with me. I came to. It happened, and you are remembering it correctly. But it was better than the other times when he would step on our hands or kick us across the room. I don't remember being choked out, and that's kind of nice because I remember everything else.
Yeah, he would make her scrub the baseboards, and
that was cool. I didn't care about that. I'd take that any day.
Right. While scrubbing the baseboards, if it wasn't to his liking, he would step on her hands as she was on her hands and being scrubbed. Right.
Yep. Or if he was making us sit down to be yelled at to just hit us, right? If I have a tic, I actually have a stutter, and I developed a speech impediment from the child abuse. And if that manifested, he would hit me for it. So my friends like to say that I have Shatner pauses, and it's kind of funny. I like William Shatner, but I have Shatner pauses because I'm slowing down so I can not stutter. I was in speech therapy for years. I had a lisp and I had a stutter that developed from this abuse, and my parents blamed me for it. But if I had a tic, like my knee will jerk, and you can't see it, it's happening now. If that would happen, my dad would Charlie horse dead leg me in the thigh, so I couldn't move. And I could be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This happened my whole life. So it's pretty gruesome. That's not the worst of it. It's not my earliest memory, which is the most horrifying thing that still haunts me to this day. But I tried to leave. I tried to leave at 16. My best friend was getting emancipated because she was in a similar situation, and I tried to go for that. And my parents, of course, wouldn't even let me see the court or see a lawyer. I couldn't. There was no help for me. Every time I went to a teacher, they just went to them. So I gave up. But at 18, I tried to leave. My parents sabotaged that and said I was running away. I'm like, I'm 18. I'm an adult. It's not running away. At 19, I just stopped talking to them for a little bit. It's about when I met Austin. I was living on my own with my partner, who you tried to sell a car to. It was the Intrepid. And one of my favorite memories is you trying to let me sit in the front seat with you, and my partner got so jealous. He was like, absolutely not. But it was cool. I wasn't speaking to my parents at the time, and I was raising my partner's child, and it was kind of nice. It was like having the family I always wanted. But I couldn't have therapy. I didn't have access to it because I was on my mom's health care. And every time I tried to go through her to get access to the appropriate phone numbers to contact a therapist, she still wouldn't let me. She was like, you need a therapy for you. You need to be on medication. And I'd be like, well, yeah, but I also think that like I'd like family counseling with you. And she was not for it. There was other stuff that she just emotionally abandoned me on. You know, I was sexually assaulted in college, and when the cops took evidence and I had the kit done, they took all of my clothes. I didn't want to go by myself to pick up the stuff from evidence. They called my cell phone and said that I needed to pick that stuff up. I was like, hey, Mom, I don't want to do this by myself. And she basically was like, tough shit, go get it. I don't have time. And I was like, okay. And when that happened, I became a full recluse. I stopped leaving the house. I stopped bathing. I stopped washing my hair. I was terrified of living for 6 months. This is right before I'd run away. And she's like, you need to be in therapy. I'm like, I know, but I'm scared to leave the house. Can you take me? And she's like, your dad will take you. I was having dissociative episodes and I couldn't remember where we were going. And he beat me in the car the entire time we were driving for not remembering and wasting his time, and then just drove me back home. I never made it to therapy and I never tried again. That's why I ran away. I just gave up after that. So I tried to never move back home. I ended up having to move back home because the 2008 recession hit and I lost my job as an elementary school librarian. And I was living at home, and even then my dad was constantly telling me like, you eat too much, you take all of our food, all these things, because he still was not working, or in like there was food scarcity in the house, and I was on food stamps and I was buying food, but I wasn't allowed to even eat the food I was buying for lunches. It was another way my dad would control me, and he would tell me like, we don't want you here, you need to get the fuck out, you need to move out, you're costing us money, all these things just in my head, because he can't beat me all the time like he used to. But, you know, one time he threw his cane at me, which was wild to have that happen to you at 21, 22 years old. So I busted my ass and I got on at the corporation that Austin worked at. And I moved out. You worked there. And I literally hadn't slept in 2 weeks. And I went through training, doing everything I could to get there. And to make it onto that company, because that meant that I didn't have to go back home. That job meant freedom. That job saved my life. Because of that job, I was able to finally, at 24 years old, when I got on the next year, I got my own therapist. I have been with so many different therapists by then, right? Mostly through Weave or through school, or kind of sort of through my mom's insurance, but it didn't last long because I couldn't consistently go.
Even out of pocket when you found ones that worked.
Because I could afford it.
Yeah.
I had the means. And I'd been going to the same therapist for about a year, maybe a year and a half. Austin and I had been seeing each other for that time. And I told Austin I wanted my parents to go to counseling with me. Again, I wanted to try that. And he supported it. And I really deeply, deeply, I'm so grateful to you for being there for me through that, because it was one of the hardest things to do. And my brother was in and out of doing a lot of drugs, having substance issues. Things were falling apart with him, and he was really unhealthy. And at the time, my parents couldn't figure out why. Like, why was he like this? Why was he like this? I'm like, you guys don't understand how hard our childhood was. You guys don't understand why he does not trust you. And I want to fix that. I want us to be a normal family. I want this for us, you know? And I really just want like baseline normalcy and the good stuff. Christmas, Hanukkah, the holidays. I don't want it to be something that I dread. I don't want you guys to constantly pit me and William against each other. I don't want you to constantly be mad at me because of something he's doing. And I don't want you guys to just be inaccountable to the fact that your kids have tried to get away from you and have lost all faith and trust in you as adults and just blame us. Like, if you can fix this, if you can own this, we can all fix this. We can have what we want, right? You guys want to be a family. You say that. So we go see my therapist. And that wishy-washy dude let them deride me and berate me and tell me everything that I was telling them was made up and in my head. Right in front of him. He didn't say shit. I fired him that night. And then when I came out to the car and Austin was waiting, they tore me a new one right in front of Austin for even suggesting that any of that was real, that it was all in my head. And I don't know if you remember that, Austin, because I know how your memory can be sometimes, but
I don't, but I remember one of the things that was really important is maintaining appearances.
Yeah, they were furious that I would even suggest that. And so I stopped speaking to them for 6 months right before our wedding. And I invited them to the wedding and told them it was happening. And I was like, it sucks that you couldn't be a part of it. All of the stuff that came before it, me picking my dress, all the, fun prep stuff, but I still want you there. And the wedding kind of healed a little bit, and we just let shit settle under the rug, and William kind of had gotten his shit together and been living with us and what have you. But things weren't fixed. Things weren't better. As stuff evolved, my parents gaslit me on other things as I got older. Were manipulative in other ways because they couldn't physically abuse me. And my mom couldn't, say that there was something wrong with me anymore because I was successful. So as my marriage with Austin started to fall apart, right? They were supportive in some ways, but throughout the time that, and sorry if you guys can hear that in the background, the people that I live with that are like my chosen family are doing stuff with their son. And yeah, but basically, as I split up from Austin, my dad was like, well, you should try to work it out because, your mom and I always worked stuff out, and I don't know why you're not trying to work it out. And so my dad was in the background trying to replay matchmaker, and every time something fell through, it was my fault. And I'm like, there were times where I didn't even know what my dad was doing, and I appreciate that.
And they didn't want to listen to her. Like Eve and I have rehashed it so many times. Like we make really good friends. We're toxic as fuck together.
Mm-hmm. Love you all the way over there and stay there.
Right. And it's
no, I was gonna say the friendship
really needed their where she really needed their support, because I did not treat her well, especially towards the end. Absolutely did not treat her well at all. And even think they couldn't believe that she wasn't at fault for something. If they would have just listened, And I mean, I play a pretty. I put on a good face, and I can play the role, and I'm charismatic. But everybody around us knew that I was shit to her. And that. I definitely contributed to a lot of her poor mental health. I gotta own that. But when she would try to become vulnerable with them, they weren't listening. Once again, it was again with the gaslighting. Like,
right. And like, I mean, and I love you, Austin. You're a wonderful person. And I appreciate you saying that stuff. But it was super fucked because as fucked as things were with you and I, it was the most stable, real family I ever had. And they still didn't appreciate what that really looked like because of Austin and I. We were able to do things like birthdays, anniversaries, dinners, make real family things happen for them that they didn't understand, that they were so bamboozled about, like the big when I'm 64 Beatles birthday. My dad showed me the Beatles like Yellow Submarine cartoon movie when I was a child because it was a huge part of his youth. And so I remember telling him at 5 or 6 years old, when you turn 64, because you love this so much, I'm going to throw you a when I'm 64 Beatles themed birthday. And I would remind him of that every couple of years. But I thought about that when I first saw it and how much my dad loved that. And I did that for him. And he had no idea it was coming. He did not remember any of it. And my mom and I spent 2 days prior prepping for this whole thing. And he was so happy and it was so wonderful. But there was no appreciation for what I needed from him, even though I was willing to make those overtures. And all I asked of this person, my dad, was to not tell me over and over again. And I mean, it was every time I saw him that I was a difficult child to raise and he did his best. And he was a really good parent. He was just having a hard time. And it was just the same thing on repeat. And I would tell my mom, please make him stop saying that to me. That is not what happened. And we all know this. It's very hurtful. It's really hard to hear. And there's no reason to say it every time I see him. If he's saying it every time I see him, he's saying it because he feels guilty. But I don't need to hear it. He can work on that. I don't need to hear it. And my mom, and I'm 29, 30, 31, 32, while I'm still with Austin and this is happening, is like, can you just fucking drop it? He just needs to say it. Why are you making a big deal out of this? Why is this a fucking problem? Why are you always blah, blah, blah? You know, you're just such a fucking problem. And she would say the shit in front of Austin. She would let him say this to me. And then she would say this. And I would just be like, why? You want me to come over every weekend. You want us to spend time with you. You want these family things that I do these grand overtures, like your birthday, his birthday, your anniversary, our anniversary. We always have time together. You want me to make this 1950s family thing. And I did. And I was good at it. I faked it and I did a great job. But I can't ask for that one thing. I can't ask for you to just give me what I need.
Yeah, one small piece of the puzzle that she's not bringing up is that she had every reason to just cut ties with her family and leave, but because Evie was really working towards building a healthy life for herself and wanted to see that for her family, she consistently put in maximum effort to try to build the relationships. And part of what drove a lot of the pain that resulted from a lot of that is there would be small pieces of hope that would be given, like things would seem to normalize, they would seem to be good, like okay. And it was kind of like if we didn't talk about our family's dark little secret, everything could be okay. And then
as long as I ate shit with a smile on my face and the things that they did, I didn't react to.
Yeah, so she kept going back and putting in effort, dropping everything for her family, and just wanted this one small thing, like just validate my experiences and we can work through it and work past it, but was never given that. So it was gaslight on it.
Yeah. So the final straw was when I had left Austin. I'd left him for 6 months. I had a mental breakdown. I did some really heinous shit. And I finally snapped. I was awful to him. I was awful, like, to Sarah. I was just awful. And it affected your daughter, my stepdaughter. It affected our friends. And I just years and years and years of being the stable person, I fucking crashed. And I ended up being 5150'd. I, volunteered for it. I came out and they had me on, a pretty heavy duty antipsychotic for a while. And I was just in this constant brain fog.
Did some pretty long outpatient the outpatient thing helped you a lot too. Like for
Yeah.
weeks
So
and weeks and weeks, you were going every day
and so
to.
I right after that 5150, I did 3 months of outpatient, and in that outpatient program, I started to realize that like I um things weren't right with my family, and I needed to like figure that out and fix that. And I every time I would start to approach it, because my support network after Austin became my mom, I kind of would like it would be something that just wouldn't really kind of manifest. I would tell her like I need to, that this needs to be worked on. Like these things happened, and my mom at the time was telling me that she wanted to leave my dad. She was constantly telling me like I think I fucking hate this guy, because I told her like everything, and she started to kind of believe me or just take it as a truth. And
That's a start.
right. And then my dad started to do these things to her, like, well, am I a good husband? Wasn't I a good husband? I did all these things for you, yada, yada, yada. And then all the things he was doing to me, forcing me to like eat shit with a smile on my face and be gaslit about how everything was honky dory, and constantly validating him, fell on her, because I just started to back off of being a part of things.
So
Because I
basically,
was
he needed someone to target, and since you weren't there.
right. And my brother at the time really just never took his shit in the first place, because my brother's reaction to my dad was always violent anyway. But my brother just couldn't be a target of that, because he wouldn't interact with him. He wouldn't give it any credence. And so my dad focused on my mom. And then it occurred to my mom, little things started to change, because I was reclusing to fix myself. I was in this program. I was working on work. I was becoming a union president, all this stuff. And I was focusing on myself. And she's like, your dad didn't do anything for me for my birthday. He just was like, what are you making for dinner? And then got mad that I was like, why aren't you doing anything? Like, did you get me anything? Did you write a card? Are you even going to cook? Or do you anything at all? And then I was like, well, of course not, mom. And she's like, this is so weird. Why wouldn't he do this after all these years of, me doing that? Like, because mom, I threw your birthdays. Dad never had any part of that, because mom, dad doesn't care. He's never done anything. I did your anniversaries. Austin and I planned them. I made sure that stuff happened for the last 10 years. I was the one that did it. Christmases, we went to Apple Hill and made sure that those traditions were upheld. We did those things. I did that. And you're now experiencing what it's like that I'm not doing these things for you guys, because I can't. I'm doing stuff for me.
You leave
and
a
then it
void.
occurred to her that my dad was the problem. So
that had to be validating.
it was weird, because she would tell me that she wants to leave him, and she would tell me like, wow, I didn't realize you were doing all this. But she wouldn't tell me things that were actually validating, like, you did these things for me and I appreciate them. She wouldn't tell me things like, oh yeah, these things happened in your childhood and I should have done something about it. That didn't come until literally a year after this instance between Austin and I. When William snapped, had a mental breakdown, and remembered everything all at once, because he said it, it was all true. To the extent that she hated my dad viciously and was like, you ruined our lives. All the things that I had been saying, all the things I've been begging for validation on, my brother said it one time, once, and it was real.
Yeah, and her brother is kind of the golden child out of the two of them.
My mom loved him so much. They had a completely different relationship. And I totally acknowledge that there's a mother, sons, fathers, daughters thing.
Sadly.
I never had the fathers, daughters thing, because no one was on my side. I never had that. Dad, no one was on my side. Dad wasn't on anyone's side except his own. And so mom and William had that relationship. Fine. Okay. But I took care of everyone. Like, William lived with me in Austin because I begged Austin. William, I took care of him as an adult with problems. When mom and dad were bullying him and trying to control him, and like not seeing that he needed support, not penalization, it was me. When mom needed someone to go to because dad was awful to her, it was me. birthdays, Christmases, Thanksgiving, I'm the one that went above and beyond to make it family stuff, right? You know, right before this happened, mom had had a knee surgery 8, 9 months prior, and she was not healing from it well. I was driving her car. I'd moved to downtown. I was picking up something from Austin across town, and I had to drive all the way back to Elk Grove because instead of going home to downtown, because my mom had been up in pain, not only with the migraine, but with swelling in her knee and her feet from this surgery. And she told my dad, I need you to pick up my prescriptions. I'm really not doing well. And his response to her was the same kind of negligence he's always had towards all of us because he's selfish. And it was, oh, well, I'll do it when I'm done getting ready for the day. And his morning routine took him 3 hours. And so she's laying on the couch with her leg elevated. She can't move. She can't go to the bathroom. She's suffering from a migraine that's making her so nauseous she could probably vomit at any moment. And all she needed was him to drive 10 minutes over to the Safeway in the neighborhood, pick up her prescriptions, and bring them to her. And he would not. He couldn't even fathom doing something for someone else. And that's just who he was. The same thing with her birthday. What are you making for dinner? How dare you think I'm going to do something for your birthday to make it for dinner for you? And
there's just one term that's coming to my head over and over as you describe him: narcissist.
He is a narcissist. He's an absolute narcissist.
Yeah.
This is a narcissistic family dynamic.
Yeah.
And so I drove all the way to Elk Grove, 45 minutes, when I needed to go home and do shit myself, because I had shit to do. I mean, I'm an adult at this point. I'm like, what, 34, 33? And I'm 33 when this is happening. And I go all the way back to Elk Grove. I get her prescriptions. I make her some coffee to help with the migraine. I ask her if she needs anything else. I run some more errands. I pick up stuff for her. And my dad comes out and goes, oh, why are you here? Oh, well, since you're here, can you go buy this for me? Because he always had his hand out in some way. Because they were always broke. Because the other thing he did, I totally forgot to mention this, is he consistently spent us into destitution. He had a shopping problem, without having a job. So I was furious. And I was telling my mom, you keep saying you want to leave him. Leave him. I'll get back on my feet. I'll get a really nice job. We can be roommates. I'll take care of you. It'll be like a Stella got her groove back thing. We'll bond. Like, I want to be there for you. I was literally begging her for this. I'm like, you hate this man. You don't like him touching you. You hate his affection. You hate how needy he is. And you hate how he treated us and you. Leave. Leave. I'll be here for you. I'll catch you. And I told her that. And then apparently, and I found this out from my brother a few months later, that she had been telling him the whole time, every time I told her to leave him, and not even thinking that would make my life harder. And he just started being horrible to me and more horrible to me. And I had no clue why. I thought we were sharing these things in confidence. So.
Because he sees it as you're targeting him.
Right.
If he's a narcissist, that's exactly how he sees it.
Yeah. So. Fast forward to around Thanksgiving. This is like 4 months later. My mom tells me some shit's going on in the house that is upsetting her, and she wants to talk. And so I'm like, okay. I call her on the phone. She sits outside to have a cigarette, and she's telling me that my brother threw like a huge drunken tantrum. Like, he was drunk the night before. He was hungover, and every time the men in our family would get drunk, the hangover the next day, they were worse. They were always worse. More mean, more violent, all of it. And so he's throwing a tantrum, throwing dishes in the house, throwing cat food bowls because he's mad that they fed his already obese cat. And he, out of nowhere, is just being really violent. Not maybe at her, but in the space, right? And it's how he it tries to exert some sort of dominance or control in the situation that maybe he doesn't feel he has control in because he lives at home with his parents. And I guess the cat thing really bugs him. I don't even know what to think. It's his responsibility. It's his cat. like whatever. But they're also feeding 4 other cats or 3 other cats, and that cat is food aggressive and will go eat food. He throws a tantrum over it. And then at the same time, Dad is belittling her and doing whatever. I don't even remember what was going on with Dad, but it was the same shit over and over and over with their very toxic dynamic. And I had been, at this point, trying to get into yet another program, a group program, for help, because everything William had shared with me and then seeing my dad do that to my mom resulted in me having a breakdown of epic proportions, because I relived all of my childhood trauma to take my brother through it and validate these things for him. I'm witnessing my dad be negligent and abuse my mom in different ways, and I just can't take it anymore. So I'm trying to get into a different program. I'm trying to get help and get on some sort of disability to do so. And I had asked my mom for help filling out the paperwork after or before this conversation about my brother and my dad right before Thanksgiving. And this is all within a week. So when I asked her to fill out this paperwork with me, and I'm sorry this is a disjointed thought, but they're kind of congruent. You know how when you fill out paperwork to get into any sort of a program, they ask you about your depression and your anxiety, and do these things impact your relationships with others and your work? And my mom's literal words to me, sitting there, and I'm buttering her up. I've taken her to lunch. I'm asking her to fill this out to help me get the help she says I've always needed. And she's like, you realize you kind of like ruin every relationship you have? And I go, what? She's like, yeah, like, and you can't really hold down a job, can you? And I'm like, excuse me? None of that's true. And she's like, well, yeah, it is, because you ruined your relationship with Austin, and you ruined your relationship with his daughter, and you ruined your relationship with your best friend, and you don't have anyone in your life anymore. I'm like, Mom, I have tons of friends. And Austin and I are working through it, and yeah, our divorce was messy, but that takes 2 to tango. And I'll take full fucking responsibility for the Annie thing, because she was the child and I was the parent, and I held the emotional responsibility from the power dynamic. That one I'll own, for sure. I fucked that. But what? And also the job thing, I've been working since I was 14 or 15 years old, and I have only ever been fired once at like 20 for dumb shit that happens to everyone around that age. But after that, I worked as an elementary school librarian, and got laid off and got paid. Then I worked for Apple, and then I got a better job 5.5 years later, and I worked for that job for 5.5 years before I chose to take a mental health sabbatical. I'm pretty sure that's consistency. She's like, yeah, well, I guess so. And then just goes about it like it never, like, what? Like, that was just the normal thing to say. So she says that to me. A week later, she tells me that my brother's being violent, my dad's being an ass, and William is drinking. And I'm like, okay. And she's like, well, are you coming to Thanksgiving? And blah, 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 blah. And as always, I went to Apple Hill, and I did what I'm supposed to do. And I got all the things that she wants, so that we have this like really beautiful spread, as we are supposed to do every year. And the day comes around, and I give her all the pies and the cakes and the fudges and all the things that I get. And I'm like, I can't do it. I can't be there. I literally cannot. And I don't tell her why. And I definitely don't tell my brother, because I'm not trying to tell my brother that my mom is talking shit about his drinking problem and cause a fracas there. I don't tell her that the reason I can't be around you guys is because you guys are the way that you are, and that's not healthy for me. And you're telling me, like, not but the day before Thanksgiving or a couple days before, that there's this violent drunken shit going on in the household, and it's the very thing that I'm trying to, heal from. So I don't go, and I just spend the day drinking shitty wine on the floor of my apartment and eating hot and ready pizzas with my cat and listening to punk music. My partner at the time, who had just started dating me, shows up and is like, hey, I haven't heard from you all day. That's super weird, because I'm a very avid texter. What's going on? And he shows up, and I'm crying, and there's a pizza on the ground, and a wine bottle and the cat, and he's like, what the fuck? And I tell him everything I just told you guys. And I mean, it was a show up and throw up thing. I'm like, this is my whole life. This is what my mess is. Oh, also, my mom says that I should never be with you because, insert political reasons here. and you're just trying to, use me or something. She really just didn't like the age gap and that he was a Republican, to put that out there. But he's like, okay, well, that's really intense and sucks, and nobody should spend the holidays alone. I've spent plenty of holidays alone. Would you like to come to the Tango Studio? They're having a Misfits Thanksgiving. I wasn't going to go. I was going to spend the day with you, but we could just do that because you're obviously in no condition to cook, and I have not brought anything. So I'm like, yeah, that sounds like it would be better than crying on the floor and drinking Pinot Grigio directly from the 750, and I should probably get the pizza away from the cat. So we go to do that, and it's my tango instructor, Donna. She's a lovely person. Her husband or fiance at the time, a couple people from the various areas of the tango community that just don't have anywhere to go or their family's out of town. And we just kind of eat. And it was very nice because everyone was going through something. I'm not going to share their personal shit, but like everyone that year was going through something pretty tough.
So basically, it was like a group therapy session.
It was. And what I didn't know, and I knew, but I didn't think about, was my mom had me low-jacked. And I had her low-jacked. We all did. It was just the thing to do to make sure everybody was safe. We're paranoid. We're like, oh, find my friends, right? And she sends me a mile-long text message because she sees that I'm at the Tango Studio about how I lied to her and that I chose to spend Thanksgiving with someone other than family, and how that was awful and so typical of me to do, to just bail and do something instead of what I should be doing, because I have to. And all this awful shit, immediately assuming the negative, immediately assuming the worst of me, and that I, as an individual, have done wrong in this instance. And I told her that I couldn't be around them, that I needed to be away from them and alone for my mental health. I had already told her that I couldn't do it this year. There was no intention in what she said to be understanding. There was nothing about that text message that was in the space of, oh, hey, I know that like you couldn't be here for the reasons that you needed to not be here. And it sucks that you had, spent it somewhere else, but I hope that you had a healthier or happier time. I just want what's best for you. I hope whatever you did get to do gave you what you needed. Let me know how I can support you. I'd love to, see you soon. All the things that you would hope to hear, right? But it was again deriding me for making a choice that she didn't like. It was again deriding me and immediately assuming that I was just doing the worst for the worst reasons, and no empathy for me whatsoever. No empathy for anything that I'd been through up until this point, or maybe that I just needed space, that I'm a human being and I'm allowed to functionally get this space. And that was when I decided, that was 2021, Thanksgiving, to never speak to them again. I chose not to speak to my parents ever again. I had been begging my mom for approval because I looked up to her, because I just wanted my mom to love me. And at every turn, she always put me down. At every turn, she assumed the worst and that I was like somehow in the wrong. There was not a point where I came to my mom for help, where I came to my mom to do good things unless I was capitulating to her or serving her in some way, where I came to my mom as a flawed, real person, and she didn't just bail, and I'm never going to expect anything of my dad. That person, I don't actually even understand him at this point. And I think that's just because I could never empathize or connect or relate to someone who would do that to children, what he did to us.
I would opine that he's not your dad, he's your father. There is a distinction.
Yeah.
He was never very dad-like.
Yeah, the genetic donor that unfortunately created me. I don't ever expect anything like that from him. But I did my mom because I thought that since she went through shit in her childhood, she'd get it.
For a
So
long time, your mom was your hero. You told me
she
about that.
absolutely was. Like,
Power Barbie.
yeah, my friends called her Power Suit Barbie. When she was scary, they called her the Commandant. I call her the Commandant. She is a powerful, amazing figure of a woman in a lot of ways. But I just wanted my mom, you know? And that sucked. That really sucked, to not have her at Christmas, not have those things. But for the first time around the holidays, I felt relief. I felt peace. I got into another program. I talked about everything I'd been through up until that point. In that program, they told me I was on too high a dosage of venlafastrine, which could cause seizures. And took me about 3 months to get off of it. But my brain fog went away. All the reasons that I was having trouble at work, all the reasons I was having trouble even like creating cohesive thoughts, all of it went away. And I was able to think so much more clearly. And I got this amazing job in a fintech company that is just wild. I continued to do tango and I got really, really good. I got fit. I got into I'm the most fit now that I've been in my whole life. I've been traveling for work, San Francisco, New York. It just my whole life turned around. My relationship with that guy that was older than me, I mean, that didn't end well, but because I was in that therapy, because I kept choosing myself, my health, and to advocate as much as I could for my needs, I think I survived how messy that relationship was far better than I think I would have if it was the old me. I've made healthier choices. I've developed better friendships, and I understand myself. I have a better relationship with myself. And it sucks because I actually had to stop talking to my younger brother earlier this year because he was, every time I talked to him, he had been drinking because he just has a drinking problem. But, and it hurt. It really sucked. But he kind of, from being really close to mom, and this is normal, he's within proximity to her, and he sees how my not talking to her affects her up close and personal because they live together. And so his empathy and his experience with that lies closely tied to her and her experience with it. And I even told him I understand that. And I don't expect him to completely side with me at all. I don't want him to side with anyone. I want him to be happy. But I can't be involved with them. I don't know if I ever could again. But I know I'm the healthiest and the happiest I've ever been. And I held that boundary. And then our dad had a health issue. And I wanted to be there to support William. I have no intention of getting entitled or like, well, I want to know what's going on. I want to help. I chose to step away, and I recognize that. But I told William, I'm here for you. I love you. I've loved you since we were babies. You were my whole life, You're the only person who knows everything that happened. And he said some really fucked up stuff. Drunk and being out of pocket. And just invalidated me spitefully in the same way our parents always did. Because he was mad. Probably because I hadn't been involved. Probably because he's been shouldering the burden of caring for these two assholes for the past 12 months since I dipped. And I told him, hey, I'm only reaching out because I care. And his response was, you don't actually care about mom and whatever. And my whole thought on that was, two things can coexist. And I learned this in therapy. And I was able to really, not for the individual therapy, the group counseling, and even now with like the trauma counseling I'm getting through a spiritual healer, which is a little bit more ambiguous and ethereal. It's not like traditional in any sense, but it just helps me. So, to each their own. But I'm really able to accept these things much better. That these things hurt, but they have nothing to do with me. That two things can coexist. My brother is my brother and I love him, but he exists as a flawed person who is willing to still live in that unhealthy space, and I don't have to. And so when he told me that these things weren't real, he wished he'd never shared that, he remembered these things, that my memory of our mother and how she treated me is not actually what happened. And that he wishes he could record me so I could hear how inconsistent and crazy I sound and the kind of gaslighting that I'd heard my whole life. I was just like, okay. And we ended the call. And he sent me an apology text message that I never read because I'm not making space for the kind of back and forth of, I'm going to hurt you, but I'm going to apologize and expect that you forgive me, carte blanche. And then I have no intention of changing the behavior. And I just stopped there. And I can love them from afar and hope the best for them. And when I reached out to him, because my dad's health took a turn, I told him, you don't have to tell me anything you don't want to. So to this day, I still don't know if my dad is alive or dead. And it's not my business to know. I have no intention of asking anyone. I don't care. If he is, he is. If he isn't, he isn't. I primarily wanted to know for closure because my mom got closure when her dad died because he abused her. And she said it was very healing. But if my dad's alive or my dad's dead, it makes no difference at this point. The closure is the closure I make for myself. And because of therapy, because of my ability to receive the astute care that I've been getting from different types of trauma counseling, because I have complex PTSD, I'm in a place in my life where I can do it. Me 2 years ago, everybody's getting shot. But yeah, so I love my brother and I really hope that one day we can be friends. But he's really in close proximity to the toxic narcissistic family dynamic. And he has a very codependent relationship with my mother. And I can't do anything about that. So I just keep going to therapy. I see my spiritual counselor who talks to me about living through trauma and thoughts and pains and how our body manifests these things. And that spiritual healing is really cool because it's like a lot of spicy psychology, I like to call it, where it's like, okay, are you clenching your jaw? Are you sitting in certain ways? Are you trapping this energy in you? And maybe it's not energy. Maybe you're just sitting in such a way because you're locking in to a self-soothing position that actually is really bad for you. How are you letting go of that? And how are you letting those thoughts pass so you can be healthier physically and mentally? Like, how are you processing that? And then I'm seeing a traditional counselor who is a more no bullshit, straightforward method of like, okay, let's look at these codependent functions. Let's look at these trauma functions. And are you journaling? Are you living in these processes? What are you doing? And by cohabitating these two methods, my physical health has improved, and my mental health has improved. I still have night terrors and have to take like 4 medications to be able to sleep. But my waking moments are stable. And Austin can attest, that's a first.
You are definitely healthier physically, mentally, emotionally than any time I've known you. I've known you for a little bit now.
And
Yeah, can you believe it?
I still remember you walking around at Apple, and you look so much healthier. You look so much better.
Thank you.
Like, it is night and day difference. Like, when I saw you pop on, I'm like, wait, is that really her? Then I got to see the eyes better, and I was like, oh, yep.
Yeah.
And you have been dropping some amazing wisdom. Like, we get 1 hour in, and you just dropped some stuff that I have struggled with, being able to put into words for a very long time, that I'm only just recently starting to really get. And like what you said, like really hit home for me. Like the closure stuff, for one, and being able to, it's like I was thinking earlier on, I was like, what you were dealing with is that the reality you're like, you've been struggling to try to get your family to see reality, and they're evading it. At the same time, you were also evading the reality of the situation that they won't, and you were fighting against that. So you had that struggle, and now where you're at now in your story, it's like you've come to accept it, and you've embraced what the reality of the situation is. And I'm like, even while you're talking, I could just see your body language. You got more open. Your shoulders went back more. You know, you started getting a little more confidence in everything. It was just beautiful to watch.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it's weird. I don't know how else to describe it. Like the one thing that I really appreciate with the whole process of being able to access different counselors is being able to make peace with things, because that was something I struggled with. I got a diagnosis a little over a year ago now that I am autistic, and that was fucking wild to hear, because you know, you go your whole life being told that like everything that's wrong with you is mostly your fault, and anything that you're going through like can be explained by what a shitty person you are, right? That was like it. And things that my parents would say to me, like that I was very pushy, that I demanded certain things be a certain way, that I demanded to be heard, and that's why I was grounded from talking about my dad at all, because I kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And when I brought that up to my counselor, they're like, well, yeah, that's very typical of autism. You know, they have a very rigid need to have the finer points acknowledged, right? These things have to be acknowledged. And especially when something is wrong. And that just shocked me. And it was kind of like a weird Christmas present, because I found out around Christmas of 2021, and it brought so much peace of mind to know that like my hard time communicating, and Austin can speak to this. Sometimes you can ask me a question and I will give you all of my special knowledge answer on it in detail. And then other times, bing, 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 it's everywhere. And I can't give you like a consistent, you know, and it's because like I'm just overwhelmed, I'm overstimulated, I'm discombobulated in that way. And my parents made it difficult for me to feel validated or heard, because they're like, well, you didn't make any sense. That answer didn't make any sense. So obviously you're making it up. And it's like, oh, this was happening this whole time. I've been like this whole time. Like if I'm overstimulated, if there's too, like I can't do live music is a great example. If I go to a concert, after the concert, I'm so nervous system raw that I don't speak. I can't hear any more music. I don't want to engage with anyone. I don't want to be touched. But on the other hand, if I'm having a really, really tough time, I need soothing touch or some sort of like sound bath to just exist. And I need routine to live. And I had none of that growing up. Physical touch was awful. We were constantly screamed at. And when I say screamed, I mean, my dad was a drill sergeant and would bellow into our faces like that. And routine couldn't exist because my dad was so inconsistent and absolutely bananas. And so when I was not medicated, when I was not getting the right kind of mental health assistance, and didn't understand these things, Austin can attest, I was operating as the best as I could when I had my evening and morning routines down. I would come home, I would do the thing, make dinner, go to bed. I would have my bedtime routine, shower, lotion, face care, ASMR. 30 minutes before bed, I start my wind down. I get up and then I would lay out all of my clothes for the next day and make sure they were just so. And then I would get up, put on all of those clothes, brush my teeth, somehow always get toothpaste everywhere. Sorry, Austin. Thank you for always warning me. And then leave. And I had to have that routine tight. And if it was
very rigid. Huh?
Yeah, and very rigid. And then I would be successful. And I was raw dogging reality, not knowing I'm creating these subroutines just to live because I'm autistic and I'm suffering. So yeah, if I didn't have access to this, and like I advocate to anyone listening, if you don't have the means and you are in California, get on Medi-Cal. Get on Medi-Cal. Get the health care that you need, because anything is better than nothing. And like I was hit by the big tech layoff massacre of January, and I had severance health care up until March 1st. And my medicine ran out and I freaked the fuck out. And the first thing I did was I jumped on Medi-Cal and was like, give me back my happy. I need this stuff to live. So I really deeply advocate for anyone who has the opportunity and has the access to the, if you're not in California, any of the marketplace for any sort of healthcare, if you have the means, get it so you can get talk therapy, you can get the therapy that you need, and and get help, because if I would not be this dysfunctionally functional without it, you know.
And I will say for me, I got onto, and I'm not. This is not a sponsorship. It's just this is my personal thing. I did use BetterHelp online, and it connected me with the best therapist I have ever had.
Yeah.
Life changing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And I went through, like you said, I went through a bunch of therapists myself before, and it is so amazing how much your life can transform when you get the right therapist, or in your case, the right combination of therapists.
Yeah.
Once you get the help that you need, it transforms your life.
Yeah.
Yeah, with understanding comes acceptance, right? One of the big things I've gotten from therapy is being made aware of some of the things that I was doing. Kind of like you just mentioned, like after the fact, realizing that the routine was helping build stability. You know, if she got sick, Evie would get sick a lot. If she got sick and the routine stopped, pure chaos. And it looked like it was just because she was sick, everything was falling apart. Now, looking back, it's because the routine broke, right? But going to finding a therapist that works, they help you understand what some of the opportunities you may have to work on, so you can recognize where the problems are. And once you recognize there's a problem, then you can take active steps to rectify those. And a huge part of therapy is they give you the tools. They don't fix you, but they help you, teach you the tools so you can work on fixing yourself. You
Yeah.
know,
Like thought pain therapy,
and that's a
behavioral
huge.
therapy, like different modalities for different people. I won't say CBT is for everyone. I won't say thought pain is for everyone. EMDR isn't for everyone, but there's so many different modalities out there. EMDR should work for someone like me for all intents and purposes. Lots of people with CPTSD do great with EMDR, and this is actually how I found out I was autistic. They were trying to process me through yet another EMDR program, and I was like, I hate EMDR. I hate the paddles. I hate the vibrations. I hate the noises. I hate the lights. It just makes me sick and upset. And I'm like, I don't, it's not, you're not creating some sort of like rapid eye movement thing where I'm going to relive this trauma. I remember it crystal clear exactly as it happened. I even have journal entries of it from when I was a kid that I have kept just so I can validate these things, right? And so why are you making me hold these things that buzz, that make me just itch? And the lady that I was talking to was like, that's interesting. And they pulled me from group for a day. And I had to take this like kind of assessment with a present other social worker. And they're like, yeah, you're autistic. And I was like, what? And they're like, it's sensory overload. EMDR will never work for you. And I'm like, well, if I had, like, I was like, no, I'm not. Fuck you, no, I'm not. And I was like, if I had sensory overload, then why would I love doing MDMA so much, motherfucker? Riddle me that, Batman. And they're like, their explanation of how MDMA like basically creates the kind of like sensory experience that I can really enjoy in a way that I maybe have not ever been able to. And then they asked me like how I do with like, that's how I found out like that it was tied to concerts and lights. And then that one time I did edibles and I couldn't fucking handle anything. And like everything touching me was just too much, and every smell and then I ended up vomiting all that Thai food in front of your friend. Um, yeah, like they're like, yeah, no, the EMDR will never work for you. MDMA is probably like, or psilocybin therapy even would be better for you for anything like that. Yeah, so I was like, oh, well, cool. Yeah, but yeah, so whatever modality, to circle back, whatever modality works for you, you know, find it. It's worth finding the right cocktail of, talk therapy, engaged therapy, and maybe some sort of psychiatric chemical intervention. Um, the night terrors. The night terrors are so visceral right after my brother told me everything, and I had to walk him through it over a year ago, that uh, my brain just stopped letting me sleep. If I go off of this medication about by 4 or 5 days, I no longer need to sleep. When I was working for this tech company, if I had deadlines, I just stopped taking that stuff and my body would just not let me sleep. And it was a complete reaction to my adrenaline and my trauma of needing to stay awake out of fear. And now I finally get 7 hours of sleep a night, and it's not interrupted by these waking terrors. And it's peaceful. I can't even explain it. It was, and my whole life, there were times where I was like beaten awake as a child, and I didn't realize that that was affecting my ability to relax, to get to a space of feeling safe enough to sleep. And then it was all just re-triggered, and then I just didn't anymore. There are all sorts of things that can be appropriately managed in different ways. It used to be weed, but then I just started eating too much. So,
I was gonna say cannabis helped you a lot.
oh, it really did, but it also helped me find the fridge.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, there's that.
yeah,
Yeah, I can't. I can't smoke.
I became a really good cook, though.
So you've learned a lot since you've started uh, basically a tour of different types of therapy.
Hmm?
You've gotten a taste of um, a lot of different kinds and seen their effects, which has been great. It's helped you grow a lot. Um, if you had 16-year-old you here, or there might be somebody else who's going through the things you were when you were in your teens, like what type of advice would you give them?
I would never give the advice that I would give 16-year-old me to anyone else. I'm going to disclaimer that right now.
Okay.
That's
Okay,
fair.
so I'm going to say that what I would tell me is kill them all and deal with the repercussions later. Kill, not William, not my brother. Kill my mother, kill my father, tell the cops. Explain everything.
Yeah, that's probably really bad advice for anybody. So,
Yeah.
No, it's horrible.
Yeah,
I'm in a very rageable space because there's other stuff I didn't bring up in here
yeah,
that is worse, that is horrendous. And so maybe that's not the best advice. If I could give sound advice, if I could give non-rageful, I was the victim of these things to myself advice, it would be just get your GED and run, you know? Like, you don't have to talk to them. You don't need their approval. You don't need them to live. They are not adding anything to your life. They are not making it better. They have taught you to need them, and nothing about what they have taught you to need from them will actually be integral to your survival. Get you the means to be away from them and get away from them. And it's scary to not have any sort of support network. It's scary to not have any family. It's horrible to spend a holiday alone. But the peace of mind and freedom and the chosen family that you can build is worth it.
And
you don't need what they are telling you you need, and you can live without them.
And you've said a phrase twice now in this episode, chosen family. That really brings a quote that I love. Everybody knows the shorthand version of a quote, which takes it completely the wrong way, which is blood is thicker than water. The full quote is the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb, which translates to the family you choose is a better family than the family you're given.
Yeah.
And that's not always the case, but it's a lot of the cases.
Like, if not for my ex, who we ended pretty terribly and whatever, but like, not Austin, the most recent one.
I mean, we ended pretty terribly too.
Yeah, sorry, dude. But the guy that I just split up with, I, as a result of being with him, have collected a group of friends and women specifically whom I love and have found safety and support and understanding in that only women can get from other women, right? I believe that there is a sisterhood that we must abide and support, because women go through things as a result of the dynamic of our current society and how women are affected by abuse or tied to these familial things, that only other women can understand. And also, I advocate that the same for men. Men don't make friends and maintain friendships the way that they should. If they did and were more vulnerable, they would be happier and healthier. I believe that fully and thoroughly, that men deserve male friendships and male companionship in vulnerability and honesty in that same way. But because of him, I have a chosen family in addition to the people that I've maintained since I was like 14, 15 years old, and I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for these women. I'm grateful for, I call this person Chris. I call him my brother. His wife is my sister-in-law. His son is my godson. Like, if I ever strike it rich, if I eat, they eat. I don't give a fuck what happens. I'm paying off their house. Ben is going to the best colleges. I don't know. They're literally the salt of the earth people. And I feel like that because in this time when I was like in the deepest, darkest need, I saw like some of the most incredible strength from people that I never expected it. And I didn't honestly think I deserved it from. And those became my chosen family. Those are people I would like fall on a sword for.
And I'll say that Os is one of those guys I would throw myself on a grenade for.
He is a dope ass dude.
He is.
After, definitely maybe hating you for a bit, I adore you, and I absolutely adore Sarah. And there's so much grace in Austin and Sarah for not only forgiving me, but being there for me and understanding, or giving me the understanding that I genuinely did not deserve from either of them. Like, because when I get that, Austin, you recognize that our relationship was horrible and there were things that were really bad, but I came to you, a young person with the worst family and the hardest challenges for you to also shoulder. And I want you to know that I recognize that.
It was a little rough.
It was really right.
And I do need to say that Sarah did pop into the chat room earlier, did want you to know that you are one of the bravest women that she knows.
Yeah, she wanted to say hi.
Oh, I don't know how it goes in Latin, but fortune favors the brave. But if you read the translation, it also could be the foolhardy. It's, I'm bold, I'm definitely bold, but is it for good reasons? We don't know.
And I think what it is that fortune favors those who take risks.
Yeah, and I'm a I'm a risk taker. I've been a risk taker since birth, so here we are. I don't know if you guys believe in this woo-woo stuff, but I do, and I think it's kind of funny. There's this idea that we choose our lessons before we get here, that we choose the path, our spiritual existence prior to this lets us know, okay, we're going to impact this corporeal existence, and here's how and why, and this is what we have to go do. And I often think, who in the fuck chose this? What about me said that's a great idea? And well, if it's true, whoever it was is a fucking risk taker and really loves that shit.
You went, I've been through this life stuff before. Let's just go ahead and put it on hardcore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know who she is or yeah. That sucks. I mean, I'm glad I'm here now. I learned the lessons. Be gentle. I just next time, can I please be a tree?
It's like, I've got all the character I can handle, thanks. I'm good.
I'll even take like a butterfly. Let me live for 24 hours in peaceful, fluttery dipshittery. Just leave me alone.
And be able to taste things with your feet.
Yeah. Sounds great.
That's
feet puns.
Interesting.
Yeah, when a butterfly lands on you, they're actually tasting you because their taste buds are on the bottoms of their feet.
All right.
I love how grossed out you are by that.
Yeah, I just don't like insects. Yeah. But you've always been somebody who's taking your friends under your wing and helping them out however you can. It's been a hard fought journey for you, but you're so much wiser now than you were before. And I can only imagine the friendships that you're going to build going forward, and the ability that you'll have to help those who come into your life, because you've experienced so much. I know the recipe to success and personal happiness is different for everybody, but talking to you offline, we talk often. I think you now have the ability to help others see that choosing themselves first isn't selfish, that it's healthy. And as you begin, or as you continue to heal, I would not be surprised if you have a big hand in helping those around you heal as well. Right. I think I know not a lot of people here are religious, and I have faith. And one of the things I believe is that the things that it's God or the spaghetti monster, whatever it is, the things that this mystical being puts in our life is because they know that we can endure it, and it will help us help others. And I believe that your experiences aren't for naught. Sucked a lot for a really long time, but you will really continue to be able to make a positive impact in people's lives, throughout the rest of yours. So something beautiful can come from the pain.
Yeah, I mean, I always say I want to help people and uplift people because I know what it's like to not have that. I know what it's like to feel like just in the worst parts of it and hopeless because of it. And I don't want anyone to ever feel like I felt when I was at my lowest. So if I can help prevent that in any way, maybe one day I'll just knuckle down and be one of those people that gets a psychology degree because my parents were mean to me, and I'll just go help people that way. Who knows?
I'm sure
you
that
make friends wherever you go.
And I'm sure this episode will help some people. I'm sure of it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you made me already reach out to my dad to thank him for being who he is. Because I'm just sitting there like I think you saw the look of horror on my face when you were talking about like your dad picking you up, shaking you, choking you out, and then using your body as a mop. that is just. I don't care how bad the relationship was between me and my dad. He never did that.
I mean, everyone's experiences are valid, and the things that you need, I hope you get them. And then I hope that your dad was a good dad in the areas that he may not have been. You guys are healing in. But yeah, I mean,
He and I, we went from I hated the man when I was a kid to he was the best man at my wedding.
and that's wonderful. I I'm glad you had that. That's beautiful. That kind of full circle stuff that's rad.
Yeah, and I recognize I'm very fortunate. I understand that, and I try not to take that for granted.
Yeah. There are definitely times where, and I just want everyone to know that it's valid to feel really lonely. It's valid to feel in the healing process like you've been completely abandoned. And I definitely have abandonment trauma because every time I've like needed someone, whether it was like a teacher to help me because my dad, or my mom to help me because of my dad, or my mom to help me because I needed to go to evidence to pick up my clothes or something, you know? And I just didn't get it in the times where I really needed it. You have to self-soothe. You have to figure out how to self-soothe. And that's why I advocate, if you have the ability to get into a program or get counseling, to learn those ways you can self-soothe. Because if you don't, you're just living in that pain and you're living in that loneliness. And that was the hardest part. That's what made it so easy to go back to them, to go back to the abusive cycle, because I didn't have the ability to triage within myself the loneliness, the despair, the feelings of abandonment and self-worth being so awful. If I can make any suggestion to anyone, journal. It's the first thing that you can do. Write it down, get it out of your head, and a weighted blanket feels like a hug.
Journaling is absolutely important. I journal myself. It's getting it out, and I found for me journaling, I write my journals as though I'm writing a letter to somebody else who has no context to the situation. And it helps me think of the way I feel or situations that I'm trying to understand in a way that I don't normally think, because I'm using language that I wouldn't normally, that doesn't occur in my head. And I walk away with a better understanding of it. And it's a release. Like it's like, get some of this energy that I don't like in me out. One of the therapists I went to when I was younger told me that if I don't plan on going back and rereading my journal, a solid symbolic gesture is when you are suffering through pain, to write it out, write it, write it out as though you're writing somebody else, and burn it when you're done. It gives you the ability to write as authentically as possible, because you don't have the fear of anybody ever reading those most personal thoughts. And the symbolic gesture of burning it is, you know, taking power over it in some small way. Well, Evie, this has been an amazing episode.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, you are eloquent as always. I don't think you know how not to be. You know, and we really appreciate you sharing your story and of the pain of where it started, and where you, once you learned what areas you needed to take control in your life, gave you the ability to find your success and happiness. You know, and giving hope to our listeners that if they're experiencing anything, anything remotely like you have, there's hope. You know, there's hope.
I mean, there's hope for anyone at any stage of their life, any age, any circumstance. Um, I, the only other piece of advice I have is you have to be willing to be accountable and introspective, because all of the work, all the therapy, all the jargon, all the buzzwords don't mean anything if you're not actually working your shit. Because I can be the nicest person and I could want all these things all I want to, but if I'm still participating in the same toxic patterns and being a shithead, I'm not going to actually get what I want, and I'm going to lose people, and I'm going to repeat cycles, and I'm going to hurt. And doing that kind of shadow work is what it's often called, or introspective, like uh, accountability, is embarrassing. It's a hit to your ego. It's humiliating, but it is necessary. With ego death comes your truest healing. Okay. And you have to do that. You have to be willing to look at the ugly, ugly things. And if by the light of truth it is made ugly, it was ugly in the darkness in which you hid it. And you have to be honest with that. There are things that I said and did to Austin, to Sarah, to my own family, which I wish I could answer to and have healing with them on. And I tried on multiple occasions. With Austin and Sarah, who are gracious beyond gracious, I had that opportunity. With some people, I have had that opportunity. I have to own where I participated in toxic patterns, toxic behaviors, harmful, hurtful things. And then I have to stop doing it. I can't just say, oh, I recognize these things. My bad, y'all. And then I just keep doing it. Healing is learning how you don't do those things, the right way to do those things in those patterns. So don't use accusatory language if that's your thing. Don't go after people and assume negative intent immediately and build an idea of what they're doing without discussing it with them. It's different to every person. I can't speak to what it might be for an individual, but it is so important. It is so important to do your shadow work. You are as much the pilot as you are the ship. Captain. Airplane? I don't know.
Yeah. I've said it before, and I'll probably keep saying it till the day I die. Growth only comes with humility.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't think anything's ever your fault and things that are wrong with you that you're doing, they'll never change. And humility can look different to a lot of people. Sometimes humility is just admitting that you've actually been a victim, when it's not playing the victim, but put your pride aside, and something has happened to you, and it's okay. But unless you can come to terms with your traumas, you're not really going to be able to. You don't have to accept them or think your traumas are okay, but it's admitting that your traumas are traumas are the beginning to deal with those traumas.
Yeah.
That was really hard for me. Like, I grew up rough and tumble, and so I could never for years I could never admit that somebody would better me physically. I'm a big dude, and I grew up fighting. Like, that just wasn't in my programming. And then going back and thinking about all the ass whoopings I got as a kid, like, I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I don't have to be the tough guy all the time, and growth comes from that. But it's different for everybody.
And one thing I wanted to bring up too, it's another running theme that Evie kept bringing up, which is how people would apologize to you, but they wouldn't change their behaviors. And I mean, that just screams of, I'm sorry that things didn't go the way that I wanted them to, and that you got upset by it. An apology is acknowledging the harm that you have caused and dedicating yourself to try to prevent that from happening again. And you know what? People slip.
Yeah.
You may repeat something. it happens. But it's about what's the pattern? What's the tide? Is the tide turning for the better?
The best apology is changed behavior.
Exactly. I like that.
He was saying
I
that
like
for
that.
years. Yeah.
One of the things that my ex couldn't grasp, the one most recently, is the idea of a four-part apology and why that's necessary. Why a four-part apology is uh, you are actively participating and collaborating in the healing of the hurt that you caused. And when I, again, much older than me, this guy was like, well, that's millennial pussy bullshit, and I don't need to do that. You just need to toughen up. I'm like, well, okay.
So,
Well, you just go ahead and try and find someone as hot and as young as me that makes as much money as I do on your.
all right. So for our listeners that may not know, what is a four-part apology?
Let me actually pull this up so I can read it exactly off of my paperwork I have from therapy.
Yeah, no problem. And I'm just gonna say, I am Gen X, and there is definitely the generational thing where some people think that the millennials are soft or the Zoomers are soft, whatever. And the way I look at it is, a couple generations ago, there was no such thing as mental health for treatment. It was you went to an asylum.
Yeah.
Last generation before me, the boomers, they were the ones that really started to embrace that mental health might actually matter. My generation really started to get into mental health as health. Your generation has really gotten to the next level. So it's like, yeah, you know what? It may seem touchy-feely to the older generations that haven't gotten used to what a life of mental health being important is. So yeah, you know what? It may be touchy-feely, but that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Right. So a four-part apology, some people say that the fourth part is asking for forgiveness. I actually have seen a different version of this recently that I like better. So I'm going to preface that. So part 4 is usually ask for forgiveness, but we're going to go over what I've seen and what I've been given recently. So you're apologizing in the beginning, right? You're saying you're sorry and what you're sorry for. So, and I remember doing this to Austin, and he would be like, well, I'm sorry. And I would always be like, for what? And our arguments were intense.
Yeah.
I can see us also just like buttoning up and be like, I said I'm sorry. You know why? You know why?
Yeah. Well, the difference is like, it's, are you sorry you got caught? Are you sorry that you did something? Why are you sorry?
Like, are you able to intellectually and empathetically articulate the thing that actually caused the hurt?
Yeah.
Right? So say you're sorry, and for what? Part 2 is, can you intellectually and empathetically express why it was wrong? What did you do and why was it wrong? And then 3, what you intend to do differently in the future, partnered with, before or after, whatever makes sense for you. Why you may have taken this action. Not an explanation or justification, but the background of what took place. Because, as Austin says, with understanding comes acceptance. If it's a misunderstanding, that needs to be known. If it's coming from a place of hurt that isn't an intentional digression to minimize the hurt of the person that has been wronged, maybe there's more to discuss. Like, okay, well, I said I didn't want to go to this thing to spend time with you because I feel as though I put in all this effort to do things with you on your terms, and I need energy for me. But what I'll do differently next time is I will express that and articulate that and have better open communication, so you understand that maybe I need downtime or maybe I need support. But regardless, I shouldn't just cut you off and tell you I'm not going to do something that's important to you without any explanation. The fourth part then becomes either ask for forgiveness, which is, do you forgive me? That feels really weird and forced. The new version I've been seeing, which I like, is I'm open to discussing things further and hearing you as you need to be heard on what has happened. And I hope that with time, we can come to a place of forgiveness. So instead of asking for forgiveness, you're giving space for the person who was hurt to express their needs and how they feel post apology and allowing them to be heard, and then leaving the door open for forgiveness at their comfort level.
So I honestly, when I brought up that question about the 4-part apologies, because I've never actually heard of it before, but I've actually naturally been trying to do that, which is kind of awesome that I've done that, that for myself. I'm like, holy shit, I've been doing this. That's great. The biggest issue I've had, though, is with trying to, because thanks to all the years of tech support, root cause analysis is very important to me. So rehashing in order to learn is very important to me. Again, to get that understanding. And my wife always looks at it as me trying to justify my behaviors. And we've just finally had a breakthrough earlier in the week, about 4 days ago, where finally I was able to get it through to her. I'm not doing it to justify what I said. I've apologized. I've said why I've apologized. I've said what I intend to change. Now I'm trying to learn where I made my mistake so I don't make it again. And if there was something that you contributed to, maybe I can help to spot it so I can head it off at the pass before we get to this point again. But I've never asked for forgiveness. I refuse to.
I think that asking for forgiveness is really weird. And like, even in the space where I've received the apology and I've given the apology, doesn't matter on what side of the table I'm on, do you forgive me feels like a weird setup.
That sounds
it's putting the person receiving the apology on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
It feels really needy and shallow to say that to me.
Right, and it takes
and it takes away from the apology being for the person, because you're apologizing. You're not apologizing for yourself. You're apologizing for them. So I'm going to apologize to you and then put you in another uncomfortable situation.
Right.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Like if they don't accept my apology and I did the best that I can, I will make peace with that. I did the best I can.
Right, yeah. And so something something that I like about the new version that I get, that I'm working on and that I've received in other like worksheets and paperwork, is the fourth part being, how can I make you feel heard after we have worked on this? And I'm open to hearing whatever you have to say going forward. And, then ending it with, I hope we can come to a point of forgiveness once you feel that you're ready for that. That allows that door to be opened. That allows that person to make time for that, to put that in their mind space and say, okay, we've gone through this, we've discussed it. Now I can speak my piece on it. And maybe then that's where closure happens, because forgiveness is closure. That's what you're trying to get, is closure. One of the big things that happens in relationships is that I hear this from guys a lot. Why are you always bringing up old shit, Austin?
Man, you people
that's one of my favorite phrases.
Like, you're like a plunger. You keep bringing up the old shit.
Right. Why are you always bringing up old shit? And guys say that because women don't often feel like they got closure in a situation. And
that's something I'm working with my wife right now. Is that years of things that we are still trying to resolve because I haven't given her that closure. So now I'm really working on it.
Yeah, so Sarah and I had a conversation recently where she's like, I'm sorry I keep bringing this up. And I've told her, I was like, it's okay that you keep bringing these things up. Because if you keep bringing it up, it's either I'm still doing it or you still don't feel completely heard.
Right. And so that's why that fourth part, feeling heard and offering closure.
Yep. Yeah.
You just got a thank you from Sarah in the chat for that.
Yeah, that went to Evie.
Yep.
It's true. It's you have to offer closure. And closure is allowing that person to feel heard. Closure is allowing that person to express their emotions. And sometimes those emotions are ugly. Like, that 4-part apology sounds nice and buttoned up, and then at the end, you feel like you should have your hat and your little fucking cane and just be done with your song and dance. But in reality, whatever comes after is whatever comes after, and it's going to be ugly or it's not, right? You can say why you did it, you can say these things, and you need to allow that person to be heard, because the hurt is the hurt, and the magnitude is the magnitude, and every person's bandwidth for certain tolerance and things is different. Like, I am now, and was not while I was with Austin, but I am now polyamorous. If someone that I am dating, of the plethora of people that I might be dating at the time, comes to me and says, hey, I had unprotected sex and didn't talk to you about it. As a hypochondriac in my body, I'm just like, I am going to claw you to death. How dare you put me at risk? But as a reasonable person, I'm going to let them express this to me. I'm going to, process this with them, accept their apology. But when I need to be heard, I'm going to be upset. I'm going to, okay, I appreciate you telling me this. I'm glad we could be open and honest about this.
Can you go get tested?
Yeah, you putting my sexual health at risk and then obfuscating that to me, which furthers my risk, is so disrespectful of me as a person that I'm really upset. Like, I'm very transparent. Do what you want to do. Have a good ass time. We're here for a good time, not a long time. Party on Garth, but tell me, because I need to know for my mental health. I need to know for my informed consent. I want the right of choice on what happens to my body. And you have disrespected that and me. And as calmly as I'm saying this now, I don't know how I'll react, because I don't know the circumstance that I'll be in. Is it multiple people? How long has it been going on? How long has it been since it happened? And therefore, how long has it been since I should have been tested? Which will then beget the response. Did it happen yesterday and we haven't hooked up yet? Cool. Thanks for telling me, even though you should have let me know sooner.
And at least you didn't get involved physically since it happened.
Right. So, but because we didn't, bump uglies, I'm not as pissed. But if it happened 3 months ago and has been consistently happening in the background, and I'm at that level of risk and it's been multiple partners, I may key your car. I may break a vase over your head. I don't know. I'm sorry. You knew what this was. But it's like that kind of like, and I'm not advocating violence. That's just me being hyperbolic. But like, if your partner is going to cry, if your partner is going to scream, if your partner is going to leave you, right? As long as it's not actually physically hostile and harmful, as my hyperbolic response is then exemplified, you have to accept that, right? If you did something that crossed that kind of a boundary, that elicited a response that is valid because that person was hurt, you got to sit with it, as they have to sit with the hurt that you caused.
And
it sounds like
I was going to say one more thing I want to add on to
with that apology is the beginning to a great is a 4-part apology is the beginning of a healthy conversation around what took place. Right? It's not the period on the end of the event. It's the first line in the story of healing.
And yes. There was a saying I heard that I really like, which is when you get into if you're trying to do the apology, one thing to keep in mind for both of you during the apology is that you are not fighting against each other. You're fighting together, and you're trying to find that ability to restore that partnership. And one point I wanted to make as well is that 4th part, with the way that you're talking about it, how you're leaving it open for them to express themselves post-apology. There's people out there who are impatient. Be patient. You may not get it right away. They may need time to process. That it could be a couple minutes, could be hours, could be days, could be weeks. Keep that door open. Let them have that ability. And if you need to come back and politely nudge them again, say, hey, how are you feeling about the conversation we had the other day? Just make sure that you're doing it kindly.
Yeah.
Well, it shows that you care.
Yeah.
Right. And or somebody, especially somebody who's in the wrong, who had to apologize, for me to go back and go to Sarah and say, "Hey, how do you feel about that?" I'm I'm showing that I care about how she feels, right? I'm putting myself in danger of catching daggers over it. Um, but that doesn't matter. What matters is how does the person who is offended feel, through it, and then what needs to continue to happen, so that healing can be found over that uh, thing that happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
Evie.
And I really advocate that if you're seeing things repeat, right, and you don't feel like you're getting, like, you either don't feel like you're getting closure or the other person isn't getting closure, and these things are repeating and it's going on for months. And I'm not saying like 2 months, 3 months. I mean like 6 months, 9 months, a year. Access outside intervention. Couples counseling is for people who aren't married too. Couples counseling is for everyone, but couples counseling is just as much for everyone. And the reason I say that is all three of us have worked in tech support, right? All three of us know that not everyone is an expert at fixing their devices, their computers, their Wi-Fi, whatever. I cannot fix a car. I cannot fix a sink. I have to call someone for help for that because there are people who are better equipped to do so. If you find yourself falling into repetitious patterns and you feel lost, you feel hopeless, and you want to stay in it to fix it, if it is worth it to you both, and the other option is staying in it miserable, seek help. There is no shame in couples counseling. Couples counseling is phenomenal. I will always advocate the Gottman method. It's been around for like 80 years, and it believes, as E said earlier, that we're not adversarial, especially in a couple. We should be friends. We should come about it from a space of mutual respect, friendship, and love. And it also deals with the 4 horsemen, which are the death knell of any relationship, and how to avoid them or to repair from that space. So I really, really advocate Gottman method therapy. I think it is a phenomenal way to rebuild friendship, rebuild respect, and care for one another and see each other as people, because that's a hard thing as we become so homogenized in relationships between these two people, especially monogamous relationships, that individual autonomy, emotional uniqueness becomes lost. So there's nothing wrong if you're married or not, been together for 25 years or 2 years, seeking help. If you're one of these people that YouTube's fixing your car and can just do it, cool, that's neat. It's really cool to be one of God's favorites, but not all of us can do that, right? We can't just read a book and fix a VCR. And you can't just read a book and fix yourself. So.
Evie,
Well,
I just have to say, this has just been fantastic. Like, I had no idea what we were going to get into for this episode. I knew that, I mean, if it's coming from us where the guest is coming from, it's going to be good. We've already established that. This has been phenomenal. You are one of the most elegant speakers I've ever had on this podcast. Hands down.
Oh, God, I'm sorry. Oh,
you can tell when she's pissed because she pulls out her highfalutin ass words. It's so bad.
Like, if you haven't,
so vast
It's like,
that when we used to fight, she would talk over my head because she's smarter than I am. And
Man, I grew up out in the sticks of 3,500 people at the base of a volcano. I ain't got no understanding of them words.
yeah, one of my hardcore icks is that, and my parents raised me to do this, and this isn't something that we did because we're like, oh, we're better than you, and this is how we're showing you. If you guys ever saw the movie My Cousin Vinny,
Love it.
Yeah,
Love it.
right. Where he argues with Marissa Tomei, and then they end up making out, right? And it insinuates that they end up hooking up, right? My parents viewed argumentation as a form of intellectual sport. And so it wasn't a matter of, and this is something that I can take from my childhood that I thought was very beautiful. They would pick out books, they would go and read things when they were having political debates or philosophical debates or things between each other. They would go and, like, if they're like, oh, we don't have it in our personal library, you wait the fuck here. I have to go down to the library at McKinley Park right now. and I'm going to find my proof. And then the internet happened. And then they were like, I'm Googling or Ask Jeevesing this, whatever it was at the time. Let me get on AOL because I know that's BS. And here's why. And so it was a matter of the more important the topic was, you didn't, if you were not being a crazy psycho in my household at the time, you didn't raise your voice. You raised your elevation of speech and purpose and cited good sources. And that's where that came from. So it wasn't me just being like, I'm smarter
so
than you.
Unprepared for that when
Yeah.
that happened. I was like, what? Fuck, I'm dumb.
No, and you're not
and then I
dumb.
caught her.
No,
and then
you're
I
not
caught
dumb.
her when we first started talking, because she has a great vocabulary, and I caught her once. I was like, "Are you dumbing down the way you talk? Are you dumbing down the way you talk to me?"
Yeah.
And I was like, and she's like, "No."
And you're
I
like,
was like, "Don't fucking do that."
you're like, I actually understand what you're saying. Don't fucking insult me like that.
Yeah, exactly. You're not gonna learn.
I felt terrible. And yeah, so like, and we always, it was cool because like he, you know, Austin, you are very smart. You're very smart. Your just vocabulary is different than mine. So our trade-off was I would
See how
teach him
nice
a
that was?
grandiloquent word. Yeah.
Grand
I would
elephant.
teach him some grandiloquent word and he would teach me Ebonics. And I would be like, so what does speaking in cursive mean? And also, why do we make the fizz face in these songs?
Well, I mean, if you're talking about the Thizzle dance, you know.
Yeah, fizz face. I know that stuff now. But yeah, so Austin, you're very
I'd be like, not what I mean. Like it's
not what I mean.
yeah, or whatever. But
Meanwhile, Kat said, I want Evie to be my therapist.
It's not, I don't know if that's a good idea. I'm still not great at this, guys. But something I have to
I'm
actually
great at you though, which is important.
yes, me. I'm good at me now. Yay! I'm not a murderous psycho. But one thing I want to also give to Austin is the growth that he has made, because when I first met him, one of the things that he came to me with, and he was very honest, which was super intense for me because I have not prior and have not since been with someone who is so honest and introspective. He was like, I rule arguments and I have a habit of steamrolling people that I argue with. Yeah. And I want you to know that I do that, because I don't want to do that. And that was really cool to hear. And then he tried. And
and then she comes with that higher education style, citing sources.
I can't argue with somebody I can't understand.
I can see Evie dropping the, so no sources? Well, Hitchens Racers, bitch.
Well, it's not even about that, but it would just be using language where you can't be in the middle of a heated argument and go, what does that mean? Like, you can't stand on your pedestal, while you're trying to crouch down and look up like dictionary terms.
Well, and not even that, but like there were times where you would just be like, and I'm putting my foot down. And then I would ask for a legitimate justification. And I'd be like, I will respect that, because I was definitely in the space of being more heteronormative monogamous and not just this, what did you call your mom? An angry bohemian? I turned into your mom. I'm an angry bohemian now. I cut off all my hair and I hate the world. So yeah. Yeah. And I was more heteronormative. I'm like, okay, well, you're the man of the household and I want to do the trad wife bullshit. So if you want to put your foot down, and I completely support you in doing so, can you explain to me the benefit of doing this for us as a family, us as a household, and how this isn't coming from an adversarial place with the intention of only supporting your current motive? And that sucked. That meant the argument was going to go for another 2 hours.
Yeah, like, no, let me speak my ego.
Be like, no, cool, pop off, daddy, but why?
Yeah, that never ended well for me, ever.
And it's like I said, I'm all about it. If you want to do the man's man thing, just prove that it works.
Yeah, I couldn't.
And then he's like, proof?
And like Also, and I just want to like give the explanation. Austin is very, very smart. Again, very, very smart. I just grew up in a very doggedly argumentative, psychologically gaslighting and manipulative household. So argumentation is my superpower. So you put yourself down, it's incorrect. You happen to pick the wrong person for that.
In other words, she wasn't the one. Well,
Yeah.
I think we've had an amazing episode, and I think this is a good place to close.
I think
Thank
so,
you,
too.
guys.
You are welcome back anytime.
Yeah,
Yeah, for
Seriously.
sure. Whenever you guys
guests in the
want.
chat love you,
Oh,
and you definitely have a bunch of fans over here, and we're all rooting for you.
oh,
I
thank you.
want to say thank you for coming on such short notice.
I'm fun employed. Let's go nuts.
And being able to basically shoot from the hip. This is one of the best episodes I've participated in.
Oh, yeah.
And I knew you would do amazing because you're just fun to talk to.
Oh, thanks. So are you. And E, it was lovely to get to see you again. It's been a minute. And I know I look totally different, but also I'm not stressed out and drowning in the Kool-Aid. So it's good to see you outside of the ecosystem of the gulag.
Right? Yeah, I mean, it's like when I first started there, it was still the apple of yore where, everyone talked about mental health is health. If you need a mental day, take it. And everyone was really encouraging, and we had the siloed knowledge so we could be really good at knowing everything about a product because we didn't need to worry about knowing everything about every product. And then it went to hell.
Yeah. And then I kicked rocks. I was like, fuck this. I'm going to the government. Bye.
Deuces.
Yeah, I love that 8 to 5 shit. But yeah, all right. Well, you guys have a great night. I'm going to go and stuff my face full of Hot Pockets and pepperoni.
All right. Sounds good.
Bye.
All right, so everybody, we'll be back next week. Hopefully with a new guest. If not, we'll have at least a new topic. But yeah, we will see you next week. Until then, I'm E.
I'm Moss.